Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with ePluribusAmerica here with another edition of EPA Live. We have a great topic to discuss with my returning guest, Professor Avi Loeb. He's the Baird Professor of Science and Institute Director at Harvard University and the best-selling author of Extraterrestrial and Interstellar. Our topic of discussion is the Galileo project that recently took another giant step for mankind. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Loeb, and welcome back from your expedition.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So, first, you've discovered the first recognized interstellar meteor or alien object that this world has ever known. So, can you talk about the historic significance of your recent finding?
It's the first time that humans put their hands on materials from an object bigger than half a meter in size and that came from outside the solar system. Of course, we used telescopes in the past to look at distant objects beyond the solar system, but this is the first time we have actually a material object that encountered Earth, and we can examine it. And it's just like going to the backyard, and we are used to the rocks that are out there, but we might every now and then see a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor or some object that came from the street, and that informs us about what may lie beyond our backyard. And that's the experience. And I received the materials from the expedition at my doorstep over the past week. And even though it took only a few days for FedEx to deliver it, it may have taken millions or billions of years for this material to arrive to Earth. And we are now studying it in laboratories at Harvard University, UC Berkeley, and Germany, Bruker Corporation laboratories there. And we hope to, within a few weeks, to know what this object was made of.
So, this was really a serendipitous event for you. You talked about how you really stumbled upon this Galileo project because of Oumuamua. You were on a radio show. So how does it feel to be at this moment? Because you also faced a lot of skepticism even within your own scientific community. So can you talk a little bit about having to overcome some obstacles and basically the serendipitous way you are now celebrating this momentous finding and occasion?
Yeah, so science is supposed to be guided by evidence, by data. And when Oumuamua showed up, it was the first reported interstellar object the size of a football field, and it did look unusual. It was flat in its shape, it was pushed away from the sun without showing a cometary tail. And I responded to that anomaly, the fact that this object doesn't look like familiar comets and asteroids. Of course, that's an object that we can't get more data on. And the meteor came as a surprise, as a follow-up. I discovered it as an interstellar object with my student Amir Siraj, and then the US government confirmed it at the 99.99% confidence. That, of course, did not sway the opinion of my colleagues, but now we went to the site where the meteor fireball was, and we found tiny droplets that melted off the surface of this object, and we had them in our hands. And that means that we can now move ahead and study the composition of this object. It appeared to be tougher than all the space rocks that NASA cataloged over the past decade, 272 of them, and it was faster than 95% of all stars in the vicinity of the sun relative to the local rest frame of the Milky Way galaxy. So it was a very unusual meteor, not only that it came from outside the solar system, but it also had properties that are different from space rocks that we are used to. And the question is whether it's artificial in origin, a technological gadget. And that's a question that is not philosophical. We can address it using evidence. And I use it as a teaching moment to both educate the public at large that science can be exciting and it can attend the public's interest. A lot of people are interested. I wrote 37 diary reports over the past month, and they were read by millions of people around the world, translated to Spanish. So people are excited about it because it addresses a question that they care about. And moreover, the second important lesson is that scientific progress should not be put down by the undertones of social media, the negative views people have without seeking evidence, and not by jealousy in academia. That's another quite common feature. And instead, we should be curious. We should celebrate evidence as a way to guide our knowledge. And we should always seek new knowledge, not argue that everything we see in the sky is rocks. And on the day that I came back from the expedition, there was a paper that just said that. It said, oh, we tried to model this meteor with our best model for rocks that belong to the solar system, and we couldn't do that. Therefore, the data must be wrong. That's a very arrogant point of view, to say data is wrong because your model doesn't fit it. I mean, we, for example, have data on the Milky Way galaxy that indicates that there is much more matter in the Milky Way than the ordinary matter that we found so far in the solar system. We call it dark matter. That's a main focus area for cosmologists. We don't know what the dark matter is. But if we were to say our model doesn't fit the data and therefore the data is wrong, that is a counter-scientific argument. And unfortunately, some of the practitioners of science are taking that notion to guide them. They basically base everything they say on past knowledge and not allowing for new knowledge to be acquired. And as you said, I really think it's a celebration of the scientific method to find new things. Just be guided by curiosity like a kid.
Yeah. Now, as exciting as your finding is, your team's finding is, it does present some national security implications. Can you talk a little bit about some of the risks associated with your findings?
Oh, I don't think there is any risk. But it's interesting that the US government, in particular, the US Space Command under the Department of Defense, came to my defense and basically confirmed the interstellar origin of this meteor that we went to find at the 99.999% confidence. And some of my colleagues just last week published a paper in the Astrophysical Journal arguing they don't believe, they think the US government is wrong. And they did that after we already visited the site and found those droplets of material from the surface of the meteor. We call them spherules. And they also argue that it cannot be made of iron. And we found that these droplets are made mostly of iron. So in a very subtle way, blue sky research, scientific research that we are doing confirms the reliability of the sensors that the US government is using to monitor ballistic missiles, And so I can say that we are confirmed what the government was telling us about this meteor. And that goes surprisingly against what experts on space rocks are claiming, that the government must be wrong. Other than that, I think we get encouragement from the direction of Washington, D.C. I don't see any issue with the work that we are doing. Of course, there is some discussion about the government having materials and having information that is classified that the public is not aware of. I don't know more about that. I haven't seen directly any such evidence, and so I cannot comment on that.
Okay. Can you talk about how this discovery can contribute to technology, specifically artificial intelligence?
Right. So if we find a technological gadget, for example, if we do another expedition and find a big piece of this meteor and it's not a rock, instead it's a technological gadget, then we can potentially learn about technologies of the future by studying it. Because if it was sent by a civilization that is far more advanced than we are, and there is a good chance for that because they reached us before we reached them. So it's possible that any such gadget will have some component of artificial intelligence to it that we can try and figure out. And of course, we will use our own AI systems to figure their AI systems. So that's a nuance on Alan Turing's imitation game from 90 years ago, where he suggested that AI systems will imitate humans. And we see that now in the context of ChatGPT, but here there is an opportunity for our AI systems to imitate extraterrestrial AI systems and learn to become far more advanced, and they might have kinship to those other systems. So that is something for the future if we find an actually functioning gadget. I asked my students in the last class of the spring semester, if we find a technological gadget on the ocean floor and it has buttons, should we press a button? And half of them said no, because it would risk humanity if something unusual happens. And the other half said, yes, we are very curious. Why don't you press a button? And then one of the students asked me whether what would I do, Professor Loeb, what would you do? And I said I would bring it to a laboratory and examine it before engaging with it.
I see. I can't believe you trusted it with FedEx. Not to put FedEx down, but just if I'd find something so incredible, I would have to hold it on my person. Why couldn't you bring it with you? Like why
Well,
did you have
I
to
was
put it?
worried that I was worried of the risks of putting it in my suitcase that will go to a lot of that will be separated from me. That was my worry. In the context of FedEx, when I sent some materials to Germany, I had to declare what it is, and I said sand, and then I had to declare
Yeah,
the
right.
commercial value of it, and I said no commercial value, but of course there is a huge intellectual value.
Yeah. What would you estimate the value is in the millions or the billions? Because when we
Well,
talk about its historic significance and also all that it brings to the table, I'm
yeah,
sure
well,
it's
it's
certainly meaningful.
these are beautiful metallic marbles. When we looked at them through a microscope, they just have colors of gold, blue, brown, black. They're really beautiful. And when my daughter saw the pictures from the microscope, she asked me whether she can put one on a necklace, whether I can give one to her. And I said, no, they are tiny. You can't use them. They're less than a millimeter in size. Each of these marbles that you see on the screen is roughly a milligram in mass, and they are just the molten droplets from the surface of the object that solidified and then rained down and sank to the ocean floor about a decade ago. And they were sitting on the ocean floor for almost a decade, and until the magnets on our sled picked them up, brought them to the deck of the ship that we used, which was called Silver Star, and then we filtered them out and picked them up with tweezers and put them in vials.
Yeah, when I was reading about your experience there, I actually imagine you guys being like archaeologists, because archaeologists also shift through sand to find artifacts as well. So, but you were shifting along the ocean floor, the Pacific Ocean floor.
Yeah, we had a filming crew, a documentary filming crew, and they filmed the last class that I taught in the spring semester, and they told me that they were inspired by Indiana Jones, and because here is a scientist going on an adventure to find some relics of something ancient from outside of this world, and then I every morning I jog at sunrise, and I did it on the deck of the ship, and one of the
Yeah.
mornings they decided to film me, and they asked me, uh, are you running away from something, or are you running towards something? And I said both. I'm running away from some of my colleagues, and I'm running towards a higher intelligence in interstellar
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. I have to admit, I was a little surprised. I mean, not completely, but to hear you speak about it actually made me feel, like we all have company in these things, because obviously professional jealousy is an issue in every field, apparently. But who knew that it would actually be in this field when it's all about discovery? But I guess, everybody wants a gold star.
Well, the point
It's
is that
surprising.
just a week before we left, one of my colleagues said, we don't think you will find anything. You're searching a 10-kilometer size area for less
Mhm.
for tiny droplets that are less than a millimeter in size. It sounds hopeless. And I said, well, I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm doing the heavy lifting, and you just sit back and relax. And by the way, the funding for this expedition is not taking away any of the money that is allocated to dark matter research. It's just a donation that was given to science and otherwise would not be used for science. And so my point is, people enjoy making negative comments, but actually it's a win-win situation where we can only, by seeking evidence, we can only improve our knowledge about what lies outside the solar system in this case. And perhaps we have a partner out there, perhaps we will analyze the composition of this object and just imagine droplets of computer screens or melted
Yeah.
droplets of semiconductors. This object was subjected to a few percent of the energy output of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. So obviously, 500 kilograms of it evaporated and turned into these droplets of dust. By analyzing what it's made of in terms of elements and radioactive isotopes, we should be able to say something, first of all, about it being different from solar system materials, but also potentially being technological in origin. And of course, if we find the bigger piece later on, that would be a much more conclusive evidence.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the incredible team that you put together. So I know it's so exciting, not just for you, but look at this team. Can you tell us a little bit about your human experience out in the ocean? What it was like? I've sailed. I've sailed. My father is a sailor, and so we've been part of a sailing community. So I get being out in the ocean, and there's a whole different world out there. What was the experience like? What was it like working with your team? And anything you have to say about this really incredible team that you have behind you here?
I was really surprised by how professional everyone was. And if you were to just eliminate one person from this team, we wouldn't succeed. We wouldn't find what we found. Just to give you an example, at the beginning, we had this sled that weighs 200 kilograms. We wanted it to lie on the ocean floor and then drag it with a cable that is connected to the ship. And the problem was that the cable was lifting it up as if it were a kite. It was floating above this floor. Then the engineers within the team and the people that are very experienced with expeditions, they figured out a way of just going with the ocean currents and keeping it on the floor. That took a couple of days, but they just did the best job possible given the circumstances and the challenges. And then other people, built the machinery that was extremely useful and worked extremely well. There were no hiccups. And then there were people that analyzed what the materials that we found, and they also did a fantastic job. So altogether, it was really an amazing experience of working with the best professionals in the world. And I really, I admire their contributions, and I couldn't have made it without them. Also, the being on the ship and in close quarters and sleeping together in small cabins and so forth, that brings some sense of friendship. We are all in the same boat, so to speak. And it was a unique experience. These were the best 2 weeks of my scientific career.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The best of your whole scientific career? That's huge. So, what would you say? Because obviously, this is an incredibly exciting time for science. So, what would you say to those that are considering a career in science? I mean,
Yeah, I
any
would.
advice, any encouragement?
Yeah, two things. Science can be exciting as long as it addresses uh, topics that are of great interest to the public. That is often a theme that is forgotten because we tend to go into niches that are used as sandboxes to demonstrate our intellectual abilities, but in fact, there is a public out there, and if we address questions that matter to the society, we can get great satisfaction. It's also very exciting to speak with people about it. So that's lesson number one, and you should not be deterred by people saying, no, you can't do something. You should take risks in your scientific research, and because if they succeed, they bring a great privilege of learning something new. And just keep your childhood curiosity alive. And it seems like when people become adults, they forget about it. They try to portray an image as if they know more than they actually know. And my advice to young people is stay young.
Yeah. What is the correct pronunciation of, you also call them the IM ones, but what is the correct pronunciation,
Yeah.
and what should people call
Well,
these
so the
alien
meteor,
objects?
the meteor is called IM1 because it's the first interstellar meteor 1. And then these tiny droplets that we discovered are called spherules. They look like spheres,
Sphere.
metallic marbles.
All right. Okay. So now we're at the question of the day. So question of the day, as you know, we end our show with that. So here we go. We have question of the day. Where does ketchup belong? In the fridge or the cupboard? Now, there's been, all this controversy. Some people are saying, no way, ketchup belongs in the fridge. But I'm like, you know what? I have a real scientist here. So, Dr. Loeb, where does ketchup belong? I think you can actually put this whole conspiracy to rest. Where does it belong?
Um, I would argue in the fridge, just to keep it fresh. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Loeb. I sincerely appreciate your time. It was absolutely wonderful. Welcome back to this side of the earth, and
Thank you.
I look forward to to the rest of your findings, or what will come from your findings. So, thank you
Thank you
again.
so much.
And
I enjoyed it very much.
great. And I would like to thank all of you for joining me. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with ePluribusAmerica, and this is Our American Culture.